Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Wichita, Kansas government and politics. We're broadcast on KGPT channel 26.1, also its companion website, kgpt26.com. Today my guest is someone I've known for a very long time, although I have not seen her for a long time until today. Recently, we connected on Facebook, and she's in Wichita this week to visit family. I asked her to stop by the Wichita Liberty TV studios to talk about the book she recently wrote titled Stretched Yet Unbroken. Shari Howard McMinn is mother to 11, a homemaker, farm wife, and writer. She retired from her two-decade career as a commercial interior designer in order to homeschool her children and to spend more time with her beloved husband, Carrie. Simultaneously, the family left their urban life near downtown Denver, Colorado, and purchased a remote farm to benefit from an agrarian lifestyle. McMinn writes nonfiction and enjoys public speaking on a variety of topics. Active in her community, she volunteers much of her free time promoting adoption and homeschooling. She appreciates spending time with her younger children at home on their farm, working with her adult children in their extended family economy, and traveling to relax on the beach. She finds joy each morning through her faith in Christ Jesus, whom she seeks to serve and honor through her life's work. Now, my interview with Shari McMinn. Well, Shari McMinn, welcome to Wichita Liberty TV.
Thank you, Bob.
So, your book, Stretched Yet Unbroken, tells the story of you and your family's lives. So, what inspired you to write a book like this? Because not very many people write a book about their lives and the lives of their parents and so forth.
Right. Well, I think what got me going was my husband very unexpectedly died.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I needed to have some sort of grief therapy, yet I live in the middle of nowhere and have a bunch of kids at home. So I started writing. I had done a lot of writing prior to the book. Never published a book of my own, however.
Mm-hmm.
And the first chapter is about his death and how we got through that. And it was it's very difficult for a lot of people to read, especially people that knew him. But like all books, there's a reason why it's the first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And simultaneously to my starting that, I came across a number of handwritten journals from relatives of my family and my husband's family, and felt that they were really significant and needed to be documented somehow. And so I decided to incorporate them in my book and talk about the 5 generations of my children now, my husband and I, our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, and that's why it's a 5-generation family memoir.
Well, very good. And really, Shari, there are a number of remarkable things about your life that you'll learn from reading this book if you do. And not in any particular order, but some of the things I found important and remarkable in your life are your faith in God, your love for your husband. I'm sorry for your loss with that. Raising 11 children, including 5 that were adopted, and where you live. So let me start with the latter. You live on a farm in eastern Colorado, I think about 80 miles east of Denver.
That is correct.
So that means it's right out there just past the airport,
It
right?
is. We say, yes, exactly. It's past DIA, and we say you just turn left past the weeds, and I'm going to write a book called that someday.
Oh, very good.
You
wrote in the book, we live in a very remote area. Our nearest neighbors live 3 miles either north or south. To the east and west, wheat fields and grazing land stretches more than 5 miles to the nearest inhabited farm.
That's right. We are 25 miles from the nearest town and about an hour and a half from the large metro areas. We used to live in Denver, and then we decided we wanted to just live in the middle of nowhere and become farmers.
So I think you wrote that was in 2001, so about 14 years ago. So quite a change from Wichita and then Denver to this. And you wrote, you began to practice sustainable farming techniques, raising heritage breed livestock for farm to consumer bulk meat sales. Now, I know when a lot of conservatives hear sustainability, sustainable lifestyle, they get worried about the Environmental Protection Agency, a radical green agenda. So sustainable farming, talk about that if you would, please.
Well, I think sustainable farming really is just good stewardship of the land. And as a conservative Christian who lives very frugally, because I have a large family, we choose not to use chemicals and very much technology on our farm, including we don't really use tractors a lot except to move hay bales. And we practice rotational grazing, so we have a polyculture of livestock. So we have everything from cattle to sheep to pastured pigs to poultry, and we rotate those around on pastures. It's very similar to the model that Joel Salatin of Polyface Farm in Virginia has, but we have dry land, Colorado, arid land, high plains, and so it's a little bit different. We did buy a fodder system a few years ago, and so we actually sprout out grains and feed our livestock sprouts that can be about 4 inches high, so they're really eating green fodder 365 days a year. It helps us control our costs and also just gives really high quality meat product.
And I think sustainable means something very different in eastern Colorado, which is almost like a desert, I think, compared to here in Wichita.
We have 14 inches of moisture a year. And
I think that's about half of what we get here.
Right now it's our rainy season, and we were in a really serious drought for about a decade, and now we seem to be out of that. We do have tornadoes and thunderstorms, much like Wichita, but...
And more snow, I think, in the winter.
And more snow, yes. It gets pretty cold.
Well, hold on to that thought for a minute, Sherry. We're going to take a moment off for a commercial message. I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks, and with me this week, Shari McMinn, author of Stretched Yet Unbroken. So, another remarkable thing I think about the story of your life is besides your own children, you and your husband adopted 5 children in 2 events. And these children, as you describe in your book, I think had less than ideal lives. They weren't infants necessarily, they were older children. Why did you choose to adopt children that you knew would probably be kind of a struggle to raise?
Well, my husband and I really enjoyed being parents, and we felt like we had great parenting when we were children, and we felt like it was a gift we could give to kids that needed a permanent, forever family. After our 6th child was born, I had a surgical procedure, so I couldn't have any more children. And then our youngest baby died, and that was a significant life-shaking event, and we decided we were going to pursue adoption. And it took us until we moved to our farm, so we had the space and could afford to do it, and we chose to go through child welfare. There's a lot of different options, but we felt going through child welfare had some benefits, and we ended up adopting 2 different sets of children. The first set was a pair, a brother and sister, and they were 5 and 7. And then the next set 3 years later were a 1, 2, and 3-year-old siblings. Both sets of children had parents who were just inappropriate with them. They were either neglectful or abusive. And
you knew this during the adoption process.
And the county that we adopted through, they were very open, let us read all the case files, and we selected children that we thought would be a good fit with our family. All children who are adopted have to adapt. Families adopt, but children adapt, and we felt that there would be more success if we had things in common, like they enjoyed being outside, they liked animals, they enjoyed art, they liked being with a family, things like that. And so the first sibling pair that we got, they had already started school in the public school system and had identified a lot of learning disabilities, because when children do not get the attentive, nurturing care they need when they're young children, their brains develop differently. It doesn't not mean that they are stupid or anything like that. It's just that they have different reactions and they have maybe different stresses in their life, and it really inhibits their ability to learn. All of our children who came to us had difficulty actually enunciating and speaking. It was hard to communicate with them at first, and they didn't really understand boundaries about personal possession, personal space, things like that. And we knew going in, eyes wide open, that it would be a challenge, and I think it was even more challenging than we thought it would be. But yet it was still really good, and we could tell we were making a difference. Each time we took our kids to, say, a WellCare exam or something, they would have made significant difference. Really substantial growth, not only in their overall health, but their emotional and psychological health.
So I think that children like this who have perhaps difficulty or projected to have difficulty learning in school, the traditional response is going to be they're going to be put in special education,
Right.
taught by specialists, professionals who have training. You and your husband took a different tack, though, didn't you?
We did. We had been homeschooling for a long time, and that stemmed from us wanting to give our biological children a different school education than what you find in institutional school. And so we've actually been homeschooling more than 20 years. At that time, we'd been homeschooling about 8 years. And we felt that we were equipped and we understood the challenges of early childhood development, that we could really help our kids learn to speak, learn to read, learn to do math. And even though it would be very difficult to be with them 24/7, 365, they would be only accountable to us. And that's a real issue when you adopt, that children triangulate, and that means that they divide and conquer and manipulate the adults in their lives, whether it's a mom and a dad against each other or a school teacher against the parents. And so if they were homeschooled, we'd know exactly what they needed and how we could help them with that.
And I think, by all accounts in your book, you've been quite successful, I think, in...
Yes, we have.
You mentioned, for example, socially, I can't imagine any kids who are more adept in navigating and interacting with their peers. And that's a criticism I think we often hear, at least from the public school crowd, that homeschooled children, you can imagine, especially isolated on a farm like yours, they're just not going to know how to get along with other people, other kids.
Right. Well, and, on paper, we're those nutcases. We live in the middle of nowhere, have a bunch of kids, we own firearms and use them. But the thing of it is, we have a full life. We have different community circles that we're involved with, 4-H and our church, but also our kids are with us, and that's the best socialization. Socialization isn't socialism. It's training children to be able to function in life and be able to speak to all different types of people, adults, young children, safely speak to strangers, greet people, things like that. And our kids are just so well socialized, it's amazing.
Well, when I think about also back to grade school, junior high, and high school, some of the kids I had to socialize with, I think I might have been better off not knowing them at all. So that's very interesting. Well, we're down to time to take another commercial break, so I'm Bob Weeks with Wichita Liberty TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. This week with me, Shari Howard McMinn, author of Stretched Yet Unbroken. So, you were homeschooling, I think, before the internet was really
Yes.
available, at least on any sort of widespread basis. Nowadays it is, and does that provide new opportunities for homeschooling parents to help their children learn?
I think it does. I think homeschooling is what works for the parents and their kids. If you're a very tech-savvy person, then there's just everything you can imagine on YouTube. There's all kinds of math sites, things like that. If you're old school and just like reading books aloud to your children, working through math problems the old-fashioned way, not the Common Core way, then you can do that. And even though my husband and I both had a college education, some of the most successful homeschool families we know, the mom and dads don't really even have beyond high school education, and they just love their children and they want to learn alongside of them.
So, well, that's interesting. Learn alongside them. So it can be beneficial both the parents and not only the parents from being with their children, but they may learn some of the things that they didn't learn or maybe forgot, something like that. Now, Shari, you're active on Facebook. As a matter of fact, that's how we reconnected after not seeing each other for many decades, I might say there. So things like Facebook, Twitter, other social media, how does how do we raise children in a digital world, yet keep them safe, but let them experience the benefits that thing like Facebook, smartphones, other things can bring?
Well, I have a lot of experience with that. And first, I want to say that, children need to do the old-fashioned things like cut and paste and talk and hear stories read to them, because that is part of crucial child development that gets your brain going to learn to read, do math, and that type of thing. It is a concern to me that there are a lot of people that just hand cell phone games to their little toddlers instead of actually talking to them. Or grocery carts at the store might have a screen and the kids are just playing on the screen. I am a believer in that we have to teach kids the developmental milestones for children, and then they will have great success as they get older. With my adopted kids, they had missed out on a lot of those things, and we had to go back and reparent them. In our house, we have a rule that you don't get your driver's license until you're 17, because we have very dangerous rural roads. Once you do that and you're doing good in school, then you can get a job in town, and then you can get a cell phone. And it is a very slow process. I also think that children need to learn handwriting, including cursive, before they learn to keyboard. And
so why cursive? Because I think we in Wichita schools, they may have stopped teaching cursive by now.
A lot of school districts are stopping the teaching of cursive. I think it's very important. First of all, it is your signature, which causes your signature on legal documents to be different than anyone else's. Second of all, as someone who is I think it's very important that we teach our children about the Constitution and the founding documents of our country. Those are all written in cursive.
Yeah. So
if you don't learn to write cursive, you cannot read cursive for yourself and know firsthand what those documents say. So I think that's very important. We don't start our kids on keyboarding computers until middle school, and then in high school they have laptops that they can use. We do not allow them to be hooked up to internet on their own until they have proven to us that they are trustworthy on it. And I just had an incident last week with one of my kids who didn't really understand the risks that are involved on the internet. And so that child, without permission, did some things, and I had to tell that child, it's for your own safety. Your safety is my priority. And even as adults, there are safety risks on the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
And in our house, if you're on a computer, you have the door open, things like that. And I do that for myself, too, because we have to be accountable to each other.
That's interesting. So, Shari, what's in your future now? I mean, you just passed a milestone in your life, the unfortunate death of your husband, I don't want to say unscheduled, but unforeseen. You've written your book now. What's coming up next in your life?
Well, I still have children that I homeschool that are down to age 11, and I have children up to the age of 33, so I have a big spread. I'm trying to navigate being a single parent, which is a huge amount of work, and running a farm, which thankfully my one son is our farm manager. But I also really enjoyed writing my book, and other people who have read the book said, you got to write another one, you got to write one on adoption, on widowhood, on these different topics. And so I have started writing a second book on adoption, and then I have a couple more that are outlined. I also have always enjoyed public speaking, and I never really had time to do it. I have led support groups for a number of years for both homeschool and adoption, and it's hard to get people who really enjoy public speaking to talk about a lot of topics. And so that's something that I have started to work on, and I have basically a couple of speaking engagements every month since I started last fall, and that's going really well, and I enjoy it. And it's time I would have spent with my husband, but since he's not here, I feel that it was something he always encouraged me to do, and so I feel it honors his legacy, and I enjoy doing it. And truthfully, parents need a break from their children sometimes, so I'm enjoying doing that. So I have several streams of income, several streams of opportunity.
Is it difficult writing a book? I mean, obviously write about some painful moments in your life, but just the technical aspects of it, is it difficult to do?
I think it's really hard to schedule your time and fit it around the rest of your life. I do have to take writing retreats to get some things accomplished, and I have to tell my kids I'm writing from 3 to 9 today. Don't interrupt me unless there's blood. And but yeah, you have to be very disciplined about it.
And I think I noticed from your Facebook postings during the writing, you'd say, this afternoon I'm going to do this chapter, and so forth like that. So, well, it's a very interesting book, Shari. I think anyone would find it very interesting. For me, it was interesting. Some of the things were about the childhood when we were friends at school and church. But if people would be interested in reading this book, what can they do?
Well, they can go to the book website, which is www.stretchedyet.unbrokenbook.com, and you can purchase right there. You can also see the chapter outline and different things. The subtitle of the book is A Family Knit Together Continues Their Legacy of Faith. And I would really encourage, especially young couples who are starting out in life, that this is a great book, and it's a great dad book. It's not a chick book. It's a great book about my husband, who grew immensely during our marriage and became just a world-class father and husband, and I really think it encourages families.
Well, I think that shows too in the book. Well, Shari Howard McMinn, thank you for appearing on Wichita Liberty TV.
It was a pleasure.
Well, that's it for this week on Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks.